All right, Ben, we've got a very cool conversation with a new Beloit fan. Tell us about what we're going to hear here after the break.
Yeah, well, I think we covered it pretty well in the interview, but we're talking to Jim Drnec, who was a participant in the Beloit Name the Night initiative that we talked about last week, in which fans can buy per game naming rights to the Beloit Snappers home of Pullman Field. And Jim Drnec, on behalf of his family, named the ballpark in honor of his late brother. And it served as a de facto post-COVID, or at least post the worst of COVID, family reunion at the same time. So it was great to talk to Jim and talk about another example in which his promotion was utilized in a really creative way. Last week on the Show Before the Show podcast, we talked about the Beloit Snappers and their Name the Night initiative, in which they're auctioning off one night naming rights to their home of Pullman Field. So fans can bid starting at $500 to have the ballpark named of their choosing. Really unique thing. Last week we talked about the individual who bought the naming rights for May 14th game, a man named Bob Graff. And that was a goofier, funny story. He was just a minor league baseball fan who wanted to spend the night at the Bob. The night before that, however, there was the Snappers played at Harry F. Drnec Jr. Memorial Stadium, and that was a tribute to Harry Drnec. And we have here Harry's brother, James Drnec, to talk about how that came about and how the Snappers came to play a night at a ballpark named in his brother's honors. So thank you for joining us, Jim.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a really unique opportunity that just presented itself through chance. I was in the car listening to MLB radio, and they had someone from the Snappers on. And just as I reached to change the channel, because why do I care about the Beloit Snappers? I thought, if someone from the Beloit Snappers is on MLB radio, he must have something interesting to say. So I hung in there, and sure enough, he was talking about this promotion where you could name the ballpark for a night. And the first thing that entered my head was, wow, my brother Harry would have loved that. He was a marketing guy. And the second thought was, I got to name it after him. So we got some family members that were available, and we all went to Beloit on May 13th for what turned out to be a really special night for us.
And if you could tell us about your brother a little bit. He worked in marketing, and as you said, this is the kind of idea that would have appealed to him in the sort of work he did professionally. And so it was a way to celebrate him with family at a baseball game, but it also spoke to his interests and the way he thought about the world. Is that kind of part of the appeal for you?
Yeah, it really was. Harry was in marketing. He flew for the Air Force in Vietnam. When he came back, he went back to school. He got a master's degree and went to work for Anheuser-Busch. Then he worked for Gallo Wines, again with Anheuser-Busch, and he moved his way up the ladder. He was responsible for breaking Bud Light, Busch beer first, and then he went to the UK in the early 80s and was responsible for introducing Budweiser to Europe. He left Budweiser sometime in the 80s, had an independent company of his own, but ended up being the CEO for Red Bull. And when he joined Red Bull, they were selling about 3 million cans a year. By the time he was finished, they were selling 3 billion cans a year. And it was sort of a street marketing approach that he fostered that led to that success, I
think. And one thing you talked about, Jim, was just how many family members came together in Beloit to watch this game. How many people did you guys have go to this game?
So you get 8 tickets when you name the night, and we used all 8 of them. Harry, just to sort of fill in the gaps, Harry passed away in November. And because of COVID, we weren't able to be there for the services. We weren't able to be there with him prior to his passing. He had been diagnosed with cancer in May, and nobody could travel to the UK to see him. So this was the first opportunity family was going to have to get together to celebrate him and to grieve a little bit too. So we had his daughters, Molly, Emily, and Kim from Texas, North Carolina, and Ohio, respectively. Me from Delaware, my brother Mike from Baltimore, and my brother John from Florida. And a cousin and his wife from the Chicago area also drove in. So that was our group. It was a real emotional night. The people from the Snappers couldn't have been better. Great hospitality, great stadium, and a great game.
Yeah, and besides just signage and hearing your brother's name announced in this stadium in this way, what were you guys doing? Like, or what were some of the thoughts coming to mind? What were the memories you guys were sharing as the game went on of your brother Harry?
Well, it really was, it really was special every time the announcer made reference to the stadium. He said my brother's name, and they did such a great job with it. It was seamless. You would have thought that it had been named Harry F. Drnec Jr. Memorial Stadium for a decade or more. Being together, we were able to talk about all the great memories we had of Harry, the times we had spent together. We actually had been to Wisconsin before. One of my uncles owned a resort on a lake in Webster. We'd go there every summer. So those were some of the memories we shared. We'd been through Beloit before. It was just wonderful to be together again. It was the first time we got family members together since Christmas of 2019.
Jim, what did it mean? You've been through Wisconsin before. I would imagine you had never been to a Snappers game before.
I had not.
Okay. So to have kind of a blank canvas in that regard, where you're celebrating your brother in a place where you haven't been, and kind of everything is dedicated to that night and his memory, and the fact that you all get together. What did that add to the experience? The reality that you all get to be in a place and it's all centered around that and being able to remember your brother together.
Well, not just that, but sort of the surrealistic absurdity of the whole thing. That we were in Beloit, Wisconsin at a Snappers game, dedicated to my brother. He would have laughed his tail off. He just would have thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And we were sort of laughing at ourselves along with it. Sorry, the mailman's here. It was, and like I said, the people from the Snappers couldn't have been better. The hospitality was amazing. They took us out on the field before the game so we could take pictures with the banner in the outfield. They did everything. And, my niece Molly sang the national anthem. My brother John threw out the first pitch. It was like we took the joint over. It was really great.
And that was going to be my next question, is you are sharing something that is super emotional with a front office, an organization, and, ultimately kind of a fan base that you haven't interacted with before, and vice versa. What was that like? I mean, in pouring out something so emotional, I would imagine with strangers probably forms a really interesting and cool bond. I mean, their reaction and kind of getting to share in your brother's memory. What was that interplay like?
Well, it was really, they were very supportive. They were very welcoming. I sent an email to them to let them know why we had chosen this name, and to sort of give them some insight into the backstory. And the response to that was just, again, a lot of support, a lot of caring. Great front office. You can see, the really cool thing about the minor leagues is everybody's in the minor leagues, right? So the promotional people that are in there, the front office people, everybody's doing the same job that they think would be great to do at the major league level. So everyone from the mascot to the front office is sort of, they're minor leaguers hoping to work their way up to the show too, most likely. And these folks were great. They were just tremendous.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I think your term was surrealistic absurdity, and that is such a big part of the minor league experience and a lot of what we talk about. So to have just it being so absurd and so emotional at the same time, probably throwing out the first pitch, maybe participating in between inning games at the same time, seeing family members you haven't seen for such a long time. I imagine there was a kind of emotional whiplash, and the serious and the heavy and the light and the goofy all at the same time. And in a lot of ways, that's the minor league baseball dynamic as well.
Yeah, and it didn't, everything was in the moment. because there were so many pieces to bring together so quickly. Everybody flew into Chicago that morning. We're all flying out the next day. So those 24 hours it was a roller coaster, and it just happened really quickly. We tried to be in the moment of it all and appreciate it, but it wasn't until, I got to the airport the next day and had a chance to exhale, because everybody had gotten there. We'd had the experience. We'd gotten out alive. That's when the emotions hit, and everything sort of washed over me as to what we had just done. It was great. It was great. And listen, for any minor league team out there, this is a great promotion. This is a great way to get people involved and get them personally connected to your team. We have the Wilmington Blue Rocks here in Delaware, and we go to games there every summer. And the level of dedication that those offices have to entertaining you between innings and at the game, from beginning to end, it's a great value. It's a great experience.
And Jim, just as a way of getting to know Harry a little bit better, what do you think his reaction would have been had he walked in and seen his name on a stadium like that?
Like I said, he would have just bellowed with laughter. He would have thought it was the funniest thing ever to do this, not just to do this, but to do it in Beloit, Wisconsin, of all places. Harry was definitely a man of the world, in connection not just with his work, but with his family. They traveled an awful lot. They went to a number of exotic, interesting places. But he was just as at home, in Beloit or Webster, small towns. He just would have gotten such a kick out of the whole thing.
And is this going to become the new Drnec family reunion? To go to Beloit games every summer?
Yeah, I don't know. They have a new stadium now, or they're going to have a new stadium. So maybe we used to, the five brothers used to meet in Chicago every year for opening day at Wrigley. And we hit a stretch where we got snowed out a couple of 3 years in a row. And at that point, we looked at each other and said, screw this, let's come back in July.
Well, it sounds like, I guess, going into a situation like this, you don't know what to expect, but it sounds like it met your expectations and more, and turned into something that the whole family can talk about for a long period of time. And, we appreciate you coming on the show and sharing memories of your brother, Harry, and, filling us in on a very unique minor league baseball promotion. And like you said, hope to see more teams do this. It's a little tough because some teams already have the corporate naming rights, and it's probably not in the contract. They can change that, but for the ones who can, it's a great idea. And I appreciate your time, and hope you can make it to a new game, a game at the new ballpark in Beloit, and keep this going.
Yeah, thank you guys. We really appreciate it. Beloit turned out to be a great surprise. What a great city, and great team, great people.
Huge thanks to Jim Drnec for joining the show in memory of his brother, and for the night that he and his family got to experience in memory of his brother in Beloit. Sam actually asked a great question after we got done about whether or not Jim would have even heard or known about this had he not been listening to MLB Network Radio on that day. And Jim had a very cool answer to that.
Yeah. And I was kicking myself. I was like, of course I'd ask this after the recording. That's a sign of a good journalist. But no, when I asked him that, he was like, yeah, it's kind of like Harry produced the whole thing. Like, I was supposed to hear that. And it happened at a time when, Jim was saying, like, at the time of COVID, he's been working from home. He doesn't travel out much. So the fact that he was in his car in the first place was kind of an odd thing for him at the time. And the fact that he was there during that interview with Beloit on MLB radio, and et cetera, it was really serendipitous. So really cool. Ben gets all the credit for that one, and scheduling and getting Jim on the show. But it really spoke to one of the special moments of minor league baseball, especially this year in what could have been a weird year. But it opens up opportunities like this one.
Yeah, those are the things that we have really missed about minor league baseball.